So, okay. So we can just start at the top. Our decorative cornices. And again, feel free to modify these to your own liking. Maybe an arch is not what you're interested in, or something else you want to add to it. Bring in your own flavor and own thoughts into how you want this architecture to present. Maybe there's a bracket that ties this down. To the facade itself. Maybe there's a top cornice that runs the full length of the facade, that protects the facade. That's the cornices. Sometimes a lot of them are missing because they rusted away. Many of them were made out of pressed tin, and so they didn't really survive. They rusted away, or sadly, even some of them were taken for the war effort and melted or removed because the paint was peeling or otherwise. And so a lot of buildings across Indiana that had this Italianate style are missing their original cornices for those reasons. So it's good to be able to go back into historic records and see what buildings look like. Some of them have pretty fancy cornices. But that isn't just decoration. That the cornice is supposed to keep rain off of the brick. And so if rain is falling straight down, as it rarely does anymore, it seems like it's getting windier these days. It seems like the weather is changing too. But a cornice is supposed to protect the facade from absorbing too much water. Brick is a terrible shedder of water. It actually is more of a sponge when it comes to water. And so the cornice actually protects the building facade from absorbing too much water into the brick. If the brick absorbs too much water, it will actually it can send water into the interior of the building or into the cavity. And you often see those examples of water infiltration in historic buildings on the upper floors. So this cornice might be something we've designed during the charrette or in the studio, or it might be a reinterpretation of what historic documents or records might show us. And during a facade grant program like the ones that they did in Muncie, a qualified architect would go through those records and try to recreate or reconstruct the cornice that he or she can interpret from historic photographs or drawings. One of my good friends who's an architect in this area is qualified for historic facades, and she was instrumental in many of the downtown facades as they went through the different levels of the grant program. So next, I'm interested in a few lines that can represent the corbelling. The corbelling is the stacking of the brick as it builds up into the cornice. I'm not interested in drawing every line of that, but I'm interested in just a few lines up there that can represent a corbelled effect. Corbelling is where you set brick slightly ahead. Each course gets slightly ahead to create a ledge. And again, that's so that the water does not penetrate the totality of the brick facade. That's a form of corbelling. Not to be confused with Corbel Canyon, which is a brand of wine, but below that level of corbelling is a soldier course. Soldier course is called a soldier course because they are bricks that are standing up straight. So if we flip our underlay up, we can see some interesting coursing that's happening there with the intent of decorating and adding interest to the facade. But I'm not interested in drawing every brick, so I will do a hit-go-hit kind of line. And then using my straight edge. Just do a few verticals, just enough, just to tell our viewer that there's something else going on here. There's a different kind of pattern in this brick that you should pay attention to. But we're not interested in drawing every single brick. It's just enough to say, there's something going on in the texture of that brick. Okay? Underlay, give you a look of that. So it starts to look something like that. So it's just a number of dashed lines that are telling our viewer, hey, there's some texture here. Just pay attention to that next time you look at the facade. But we're not interested in drawing every single brick. A lot of your line work will disappear into the rendering, so don't worry about the accuracy or the precision of that. Just give the impression of texture in that upper part of the cornice and of the facade. Next, we notice that there's some coursing above each of the arched windows. So I'll go down to the window now and start to block out some of the diagonals that are forming the brick arches above each window. Those are soldier courses or arched. Those are arched course windows there. They look something like this. There's a second line, and just make some lines that point down to the radius point of that arch. Now it looks like the building has eyelashes. So they look something like that. I'll pause the video there. So, bottom sill, probably limestone. Top, window panel with an arched top. Goes up into the arch. Bottom panel of the window is the slider. That restores it now to what we call a double hung window. Operable double hung windows. Okay, so we'll do that now for all of the upper story windows. I just went with really simple architecture based on the proportions and lines of the historic building. I just carried through several of the horizontal lines that I could find on the facade there, so that this has a relationship with the existing building. And you can put in as many accent lines or as little as you want. I put some flowers there in the flower box. Kind of looks like salad coming over a plate. Pop up the flower box there. Maybe there's another flower box coming off of the side facade for a window that might be back there. We've got a railing, and I'm showing us occupying this roof. So it might be a nice party deck or something like that. So I'll just drop in a few railing balusters. To show a substantial railing there for our studio or granny flat, whatever this becomes. And then we have what is our sign plate. The sign plate is a buildup of metals, architectural metals, that will display the letters for the sign above the clerestory windows. In Michigan we say clear story, but it's spelled clerestory. I'm carrying that all the way across, basically covering up and leveling out the second floor structure of our studio or granny flat above this brick portion here. I'll throw this underneath just to give an idea of what that looks like. I'll zoom out, get a feeling of where we are. Okay. How you doing? So? Okay. And we'll stop the video there. Next, I'm going to start attacking this clerestory. So, I'll pull down some columns which represent bearing walls inside of the building. Make a frame for these clerestory windows to sit in. And I'm just going to go for what we call a prismatic glass. It's just a grid. So it's a stop, go, stop kind of pattern. Basic grid. that. There is a clerestory. I'm putting a clerestory window in the staircase that will help light the staircase during the day, so the staircase is not too dark. I'll also send light into that staircase. Next, there's a column, and then another series of clerestory windows here. I'm just doing hit, go, hit style lines, fine line weight. And dragging some vertical lines, few, not all of them. Don't have to draw every line. Just give the impression of that prismatic grid for that clerestory window. Or as we say in Michigan, clear story. One of the fall semester freshmen was telling her classmates about growing up in Wisconsin and how they have many Wisconsinisms, terms for things like calling a drinking fountain a bubbler, which is very British for them to say, but apparently they say it also in Wisconsin. Who knew? Or at least in her posh part of Milwaukee. But bring these columns down. And it starts to look something like that. I'll pause the video. How we doing? Okay. Okay. We make lettering in colored pencil or marker. It gives us the opportunity to do it as double line, and that way we can start to do things with it. Make that really pop, or we can put color on it or light it up. There's a lot of things we can do. We've got a double line letter in the drawing. Sometimes I'll isolate these letters in Photoshop, turn them white, bring them back into the facade, pop them out, make them neon. There's a lot of tricks that we can cover on our Photoshop night where we can push these around and make them light up and things like that. So that's why I like to draw double line letters in facades like that. Now you can see that these doors here are set in, so there's a slight angle, right? So a slight recess. We set the doors in for practical reasons. We don't want snow and ice and rain to come into the door every time it's opened. So there's always an advantage to recessing a door a bit or having an awning over it. In those cases, and when it's not possible. Even the staircase door is set back a few inches, and again, that's so that rain and snow are falling off of the facade do not come into the door every time it is opened. So you can see that slight recess there, and you can see a slight recess here, and you'll notice these windows are at an angle, and these windows are at a very slight angle, so we'll reflect that when we draw them in. There's a slight angle back, slight ceiling, and forward like that. You can see that. Slight angle in. So we'll reflect that setback. Some of the wisdom of our predecessors, practicality in those 19th century buildings. When you go visit different cities, just check out different historic storefronts. There's some really fascinating examples still out there of classic storefronts, some that have been restored, some interesting renovations from the 40s. Lots of different materials. A lot of bad ones too, and that's what this drawing starts to try to mitigate. We have folks across the state, like the Historic Landmarks Foundation of Indiana, that helps with facade restoration in small towns. They did a fantastic job in Farmland, Indiana, which is in Randolph County. If you ever get a chance to go to Farmland, it's about 22 miles east of Muncie. It's a great Saturday destination for a sandwich and a shake or a malt. But Historic Landmarks Foundation of Indiana assisted a lot of business owners in Farmland with their facades and did a magnificent job bringing them back to their 19th century splendor. See that sense of depth, that sense of three-dimensionality as we look at those doors that are set back from the street. Go back to my underlay. populate this thing now. So there's a few doors here that I could use as reference. So a person will be just shorter than a door. It's always good to populate these so they're not dead looking. Do we want a tree? Please? Okay. All right. So we can see the stop lines right there. So that's the stop line. So we can do maybe on this highway. This is a state highway, so a little tough, but we can do a little bit of a bump out. Primary branches, secondary branches.
Voices crying, shadows of houses, face change. Cruel secret.
Maybe a little bump out over here on the right. Just a few grasses maybe. Let that dry. I will then layer in my tree.
To your station, I will be here when you need me. I will be here for the rain. I will be here on Diamond Mountain.
Don't want my trunks to be too thick. Have to be careful. Just kind of layer in a tree. Probably a juvenile tree, probably teenager. About 15-year-old tree. Just layer it in. Something like that. Make a bulb out. Curb. And a crosswalk. Bring in the contours of my scale figures. Add a couple more, kind of walking through. Some people sitting up on this deck, this party deck. Back on the mountain. Don't need a lot of detail, just indication, chairs and table, some indication of clothing and hair, and that's about it. Some potted plants up there. Just a few texture or dots for buds. Maybe this is early spring. As we're experiencing now in Indiana. Just a few buds starting to shine through here. Turn of the month. Still waiting for that warm weather to come in. We'll just add this bulb out. People inside the coffee shop, maybe sitting against the window, coming through the door. Just give a general sense of busyness there. that gets us to a point now where we're starting to get some foreground now, starting to build up some things from the facade. We've got our coffee shop studio, upper floor studio going. We've got all of our line work, any other decoration or elements we want to incorporate here. If we want to start thinking about the name of the business or businesses we want, what sounds good tonight? So if this is already a coffee shop, then what should we have over here? What do you think? Pizza. Yes. Okay. Two guys, a girl, and a pizza place. Yeah. That sort of completes our line work. So just take a look at your work, check everything over, make sure stuff is kind of closed up. There are no gaps or anything like that, and that is ready to render for either daytime, nighttime, or a little bit of both. So we'll stop there and take your break. All right, so now we have our line work completed. We have no shade or shadow on this. This is all basically all fine line weight, and so we have the option at this point to do a few things. One, we can take a scan of it if we needed it for a coloring book or something like that. Sometimes that's fun to sort of give kids in the community during a charrette or after a charrette to get kids involved. But we have no sense of shade or shadow or depth when it comes to like either line weights or shade or shadow from elements that might be casting onto surfaces. I do need to get, I need at least one person in my pizza place, my goodness. So they need to be maybe carrying out a pizza. So, so there's somebody with a pizza. So what we'll do is I'll label the front and back, just to make sure we know where we are. So that's the front. Then I'll flip it over. Take away the underlay. Flip this over. Label the back. And we're not going to make a vertical line. We want to make a slight angle, just so it doesn't look like it's part of the architecture. We want this line to sort of feel like it's almost diagrammatic in a sense. So decide how much you want to go here. If you want to just split it down the middle, or if you want to do a 2/3 relationship. But basically I want to go maybe, I think I'll go right there. Woo! That was unnerving. Okay, so a little bit. All right, now this is going to be night on one side and day on the other. Okay, so when you flip it back over, nice catch. Almost lost the camera there, but made for an interesting evening. So we'll have this side be day and this side be night. Okay. So let's make sure it's just flipped over on the back. I'm going to take a blue colored pencil, and I just want to establish my upper limit. So I'm just going to go up to my cornice line here. And I'm just going to slide up a couple of inches and just establish my upper limit. You don't want to over render anything, so we just want to get that, establish a top line for where the skies are going to be. And then likewise just come down and establish a lower limit for that. I'll do the same for this, what is now the right side. I'll just slide from one end of the facade and drop a little bit of blue there. And finally, takes me right to the edge of my paper. I'm using 14 by 17 tracing pad, so I'm right at the edge of my paper. So I'll just drop some blue there. Okay. First color is blueberry. And I'm just going to lay some blueberry all over that night sky. This is on the back. We on the back. We on the back, ain't no whack. I'm just going to lay in a layer of blueberry. Right up to our red line. Okay. All right. Flip it back over, back in the front. We need some lighting, right? So this pizza place needs some lighting. Maybe there's a lamp like right there shining onto the sign plate. Maybe there's a lamp here at this level just needs something. It's not going to look like much. So maybe some lamps can be installed along one of these lines here on our coffee house, and some lighting, down lighting here on the facade. So we'll install some lamps onto the side of the building. Flip it. This is sort of like going through the checklist and going, oh, we need some lighting on this thing. Those won't be visible during the daytime side, but we'll just install them right above the sign plate. And do that, flip it back over. This is negative space. I forgot that. In my design, that's negative space. Okay. Next, we'll take a goldenrod or cad yellow, or pale yellow. Any one of those will work. I'm just going to assume that everything's open and there's light emanating from each window. Some of these people are inside, some are outside. I put a little bit of light splash around our lighting fixtures, just a little bit of splash there, a little bit coming out of our cans there that are located on the building itself. Just assume that someone's home upstairs. Assume that the pizza place is open. Should be open at night for sure. Okay, that's just light now emanating from each of those windows. Yeah. Got to readjust my tripod here. Okay. All right. Get all my ducks in a row here. Then, with this same yellow, I'll do some light splash onto the sidewalk. We'll just assume that there's some light kind of reflecting off of that sidewalk, coming down, hitting the sidewalk, and just really starting to make this streetscape aglow. So I'll just layer in some of that yellow. This is cad yellow, or cadmium yellow, pale yellow, canary yellow, or goldenrod, or a combination of those. Paint in or layer in some nice yellows to show the presence of light on that nighttime side. Oppositely, on the daytime side, come over here, and I'm just going to pick sky blue. And I can just do a solid color, or I can do a cloud pattern. I'm just going to do a solid color for this one. Solid layer of sky blue on the daytime sky. come all the way down to the horizon line, I'll just lay in just a single layer of that sky blue. Now, in the daytime, there's going to be some cast shadows. So I'm just going to assume that the sun is to our right at the moment. I'm going to take my sign pen and I'm going to cast a shadow from the window frame onto the glass. Window frame onto the glass. Window frame onto the glass. Window frame onto the glass using the sign pen. If you're using the Prismacolor markers, you could use the fine tip of the Prismacolor markers. You could also use a Sharpie. Then, the shadow from the masonry onto the window frame. From the masonry onto the window frame. Look at that. See what kind of depth that gives now? Really makes it pop. There's a slight cast shadow under the lintel or the sill. Slight cast shadows. You can sort of pick where they go. Portions of the cornice that would be protruded. You can decide what parts you want to pop out. Just give a sense of depth. The sign pen adds a nice line weight to those areas of the cornices and the windows to really give them depth. Okay, that's for our daytime half. I'll do the same for the clerestory. Each piece of the frame of the clerestory gets a cast. This clerestory above the staircase gets a cast all the way over. Look at the depth that starts to give. We're still on the back. This is dependent on solar direction, but sometimes you have to sort of suggest it. The purpose of this is not always to indicate solar direction, but it is to indicate depth. Now it gets interesting. See this plane right here? Right there. This is the ceiling of the inset where that door is. We pop into the facade, into the storefront a little bit. We've got a little bit of a ceiling. That's going to cast a shadow, and it's going to become black. Because that's all in shadow now. Door frame. Now it really looks like it's in there, right? Okay, now look at that depth. And then people might cast a shadow. Plants might start to cast. The tree is in spring. It's a spring tree, so it's not casting a lot of stuff, but it might start to cast as well. Okay. These are not shadows that occur on the nighttime half, necessarily, because light is emanating from the interior of the buildings. Okay. Upper story windows during the day reflect the sky. Take your sky blue and just paint a little bit of blue up there. Upper story windows reflect the sky. And there's a little bit of blue in the upper part, just the top part of the storefront. This is a small town, so there's not a lot of tall buildings around. Clerestory windows. Get a little bit of blue up here. And then I'm going to take my 6 cool gray and add 6, cool gray. That was a 3. Well, we're having fun tonight. This is a 6 gray now, and this is now the impression of reflections in that storefront of buildings across the street. Sure. You can always add colored pencil to people, bring them back. Don't worry about that. I'm just going to really lay in some of that gray to try to get some darkness and depth in that storefront. Okay. I gave you a color underlay tonight so you can see sort of that natural color of brick, right? So that's terracotta, sienna brown. It is not brick red. Unfortunately, brick red is not an accurate color. For my purposes, I think I'm actually just going to use desert tan for this. And I'm just going to lay in desert tan on both the night and the day. I'm deciding to keep the brick color as it is. Brick seems like it's in good condition. On the nighttime side, though, I'm going to stop short of where the light is. Notice I'm rendering around it. Notice that? I'm rendering around those lights. Stop short. Okay. What color would we like our facade work and cornice to be? What color would you like? Shall we review what colors are available? No. This was a participatory question. If you do not answer, I will assume that you are German and shall address you in German. Was ist ein Farblich für dein Architecture? Hier. Ein Bilder ist ein Farblich für hier und hier. Na, next? Next? What color would we like for the facade and for the cornice? Dark green? Dark green? Sure. All right. I'm going to pick out slate green and emerald green. This is slate green. Green's a great color for a pizza place, so good choice. Go to the Old North End in Boston and walk past all those Italian restaurants, pizzerias. Yeah, lots of green up there on the Old North End of Boston. I'm going to lay in some green in this portion of the cornice. I'm going to leave that white, though, for now. Dana, did you make it up there to the Old North End? Awesome. Oh my goodness, wonderful. Take that slate green and lay it in on the window frame as well. We'll just go for an all green facade here. So recommend the Old North End as a great spot to visit. Because this is an Italian bakery, let's give them some nice red doors. Yeah. Some nice red door. Things I love when I visit London and Delft and Amsterdam are just the colorful storefronts everywhere. I'll take some red and just take it into that clerestory frame as well. And just a little bit of buffer, a little bit of cream up there for that plate there. All right. Now, for texture, to reinforce texture, I want a terracotta colored pencil. And I want my straight edge. I'm just going to reinforce some of those lines. The corbelling, kind of like a typewriter here, I'm kind of moving the straight edge with my non-dominant hand, and then I'll just reinforce some of the soldier coursing. This will work with your line work to give that impression of the variations of brick and the color of the mortar. Okay. So just kind of lay in a few lines there. Then when you get to below the soldier coursing, just lightly do a few stop and go kinds of horizontal lines. This is a Harry Egink / Jim Leggett technique. The colored pencil wash establishes the brick color and the mortar color. The colored pencil suggests the horizontal courses of the brick. Sometimes I'm gradually moving that rolling ruler down with my non-dominant hand and just going back and forth with the dominant hand. The terracotta, just reinforcing an impression of those horizontal courses of brick. Okay. A little bit of gray on the pavement. I never ever render asphalt black. Always use my grays for those. Maybe a little bit of warmth for a bulb out. And then we'll flip it over and take a good look at it. Just see how our daytime worked out. Just see how that works. Okay. I'll continue with desert tan. This portion of the building already was brick. We're basically modifying it, so I'm just going to wash a little bit of desert tan in the bricked areas. Go with some other color. We could actually keep going with the green. That can work if we wanted. The slate green can work. We can carry that up. This green is obviously a popular color for an international coffee chain, so some color association we can attach to that. And maybe we can alternate down here. A little bit of green in the grass. This is slate green. This is slate green. Okay. And, should I alternate the color? I'm just going to use a beige. Just a beige for everything else. And I'm just going to use this beige for all of that. Potted plants get a little bit of splash. Window box, all of those. All right. It is nighttime though. So I'm going to take my blueberry and cast a thin shadow there, and a thin shadow there, a thin shadow there, a thick one there. I think I want to light that up, that sign there. So a little bit of blueberry on the people. Maybe there's some candlelight up there. Fill in some of the gaps up here with blueberry. And just a blueberry cast shadow under that sill and under that flower box. You can always add blueberry to things that contain yellow and it will darken it. Now, I'm going to take a go into pencils now. It's probably enough for the color. So for marker color. So now I have to go back into my palette for the peaches, pinks, oranges for the nighttime, right? So recall that from our last exercise. We have a sort of a palette of color that's going to render the presence of light, as well as some of the interiors. And then I need a dark purple. I like black grape, personally. It's one of my favorites. Black grape was also a band when I was in college. But, black grape is a great color for dark areas in the nighttime rendering. So dark purple or black grape. It's going to be, I've got a dark purple here I think will work just fine. So I'm going to take this dark purple now and I'm just going to accentuate some of these shadowed areas where we hit that blueberry. I'm now going to start casting down a layer of colored pencil down the facade. This is dark purple. I'm going to reinforce that shadow there. Bless you. Yeah, I prefer black grape. Black grape. Violet is a good one. So dark purple, violet, black grape. Are the good sort of darker violets, purples we can use. Notice how I'm just sort of washing it now over our green and things. Starting to get that impression now of this building now starting to take on a nighttime cast. I'm going to avoid my areas of light and just bring a little bit of that dark purple down into our areas of the cafe seating and things like that. It will mix with our desert tan, and it will even work as a brick substitute. This dark purple. Oh goodness, forgot this whole part of the facade. Oh no. Goodness. All this light coming through the clerestory, all this light hitting the sidewalk. Okay. All that activity in that pizza place there. And where there's darkness, I can add the dark purple to this green to start to give it a sense of darkness and absence of light. See what that does? The great thing about purple is that it is the color complement of yellow. And of course, green contains yellow, brown contains yellow. So that's why purple is so versatile to really give darkness and give character to colors that contain yellow. So really what it is, it's kind of a wash of purples. It's a wash of purples over the existing building colors. It's really all it is. Last class's exercise was more dramatic in the colors, but here you want to take on a little bit, more, simplified method. So I've got slate green, all the normal areas it should be. I'm just adding a layer of purple in the form of either blueberry for marker shadow or dark purple for the color pencil shadow. Now, on the daytime, this was terracotta. I'll use the dark purple over here to do the brick. Really darken those windows, that purple. So it's just kind of like we're walking down the street in Quebec City or Alexandria, Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, or Brooklyn. Try to get that sense of vibrancy and that sense of nightlife is what you're really selling with this image. Just helping folks rediscover their towns and understand the concept and potential of nightlife in their town. I'm going to stop all that purple short of that where that light is. I want that light to cast down. And I'll add I might want to add more purple to this. Just kind of wash it in. I'll put my straight edge up here and I'll just kind of do a diagonal wash. Just kind of that soft evening light, right? Don't want to overdo it, but just enough. Just a little bit more, maybe over here. I'm going to stop short of where the light is, right? Don't like that window frame yet. I'll just keep adding to it. Just remember to use your straight edge as a hard edge to render against. If you're doing facades like this or hard edges, just always remember that you can render against an edge. Never forget that. Now I've got my peaches, pinks, yellows, and orange. I will follow up on some of the techniques we practiced last week, just in terms of getting warmth and vitality in some of these interiors. You can decide what you want to do with that coffee sign, if that's red neon or if we want to leave it white neon. Pinks, yellows, add to the warmth, the interior of our coffee house. Maybe there's a candlelight upstairs up on this deck, so there's just a little bit of light hitting them. Maybe they're just using candles up there. There's a little bit of cast in here. There's a little bit of warmth. This is an orange. Just warmth coming from through these windows. Where it's a pizza place, you got to have the folks working inside, throwing the pie, throwing the dough. Those busy New York pizzerias or Chicago pizzerias, they're back, tossing the dough. Just a little bit of pink for the sign. Bring some of that pink down onto the pavement. Just that warm glow of the evening light and of all this vitality coming from within. You can really give the impression of a busy nightlife district with just a few techniques. True blue. I look for true blue. Come up to the top of my sky now. I'll put my straight edge here. I'll just do a diagonal wash. True blue. Just work with that blueberry just to give that impression of that dusk twilight sky where the sky turns that brilliant indigo for that moment right after sunset. And I can bring that down, but I don't want to overdo it. There may be some gray, not a lot. Just a tiny little bit of gray splash, just for some darkness. Try to unite both sides of the drawing. And that is a split daytime and nighttime rendering. Look for any other gaps or things that you want to continue to add. If you want a little bit of foliage on that spring tree, or if the grasses need some, or if you want a little bit of color on your scale figures, then finish it up and then we'll hang them up. Final touches, I will just flip it onto the front and just I'll hit, if I decide that I wanted a little bit of neon or a little bit more warmth, or any person or surface needs a little bit more color as it shines through, I can add that to the front. I don't want to compromise the integrity of any of my line work, but sometimes you just want a little bit more warmth, when it makes sense. So, and we'll call that done.